Thank you, Timothy, for that warm introduction. You know, I was showing a video of all of us from 2008 this morning. We all looked younger and had darker hair, you know. So 15 years goes by rather quickly. Well, it's my great pleasure to be with my dear friend now, Gervase Warner, for the next half an hour or so. I met Gervase about 7-8 years ago. I think we were at Bob Chapman's offices in St. Louis. And then this March, Neha and I had the wonderful opportunity to spend about 10 days in the Caribbean, in Trinidad and in Barbados, where I actually lived as a child from 1965 to 67, from the age of 7 to 9, and Guyana. And we really got to spend time with Gervase and his leaders at the Massy Group, as well as his wife, Leslie. And it was really a highlight experience for me. And Gervase is one of those leaders that instantly, when I met him, I said, this is just a natural leader. You can just see it. You know, some people just have that. So Gervase, let's start with your background. Timothy mentioned a little bit, but you were born in 1965, 3 years after the independence of Trinidad. You know, as somebody from an ex-colonized country, I can kind of relate to what that feels like. Right, so tell us a little bit about your childhood. By the way, one of my favorite things about Gervase is that lovely lilting accent. If you talk to him, you will just be delighted and happy, regardless of what he says. And there's an expression.
That's the Caribbean heart, right?
Yeah, the Caribbean heart. And we learned a lot of lingo, you know, the Caribbean lingo, Trinidadian lingo. Like, I'm just liming. If you say, I'm just liming, that means I'm just chilling, I'm just relaxing, you know. So there's a lot of that, okay? So do get to know Gervase over the next couple of days. So tell us about your childhood, your upbringing, what life was like in the 60s in Trinidad.
Sure, Raj. First of all, I'd just like to say I'm really happy to be here. It's my first time coming to the summit. And when Rand asked me earlier, I said, I feel like I'm home. And so it's just wonderful to be here at this session with all of you. Yeah, Raj, I had a fairly innocuous kind of childhood. My dad was a public service guy. He worked in one of the ministries, and he ran a government agency called the Industrial Development Corporation, and he was one of these post-independence kind of involved people. So I kind of grew up in a household that kind of had that vibe, uncle this and uncle that, and they would be talking about, you know, what we're going to do to make this country great. And, you know, so there was that kind of, I mean, I was a child, right? So I was just, but you're kind of overhearing the conversations. And so that was around me. My dad was an important example. But I grew up pretty carefree. Back in those days, it was sort of like the real idyllic days, you know. You get home from school or you're on vacation and you just go out into the street, you go into your neighbor's house and, you know, you get a meal, they come over to you, you go up in the hills in the morning, you come back in the afternoon, and, you know, just carefree existence. And I kind of grew up that kind of way, real island life. But I would say that my parents were always serious about education, and I wasn't necessarily the best student. So, yeah, so I had some you know, occurrences in life where, you know, you didn't sort of succeed in some critical examinations, call them, you know, fail forward. And those were enlightening experiences. And eventually I decided, you know, I got to take this thing seriously because I recognize that, you know, I'm not going to go very far. I mean, I wasn't one of the cool fellas. I mean, I was hilarious. I was quite funny. But, you know, I played some sport. I was never really very good. So I decided, like, I better do some schoolwork so that I could, as we say in our local parlance, get through, which means like succeed, but in local we would say get through. And yeah, and so that led me to sort of studying hard and going to university and having some of the career path that I've had. Been fortunate.
Yeah, so you had the benefit of about as elite an education as you can get, right, with Wharton and then Harvard Business School. And then, of course, you went into the trajectory that leads to, which is McKinsey. So tell us about that experience. And then, you know, many of us came to this country to get a PhD or higher education, and then I stayed. But you made the decision after a very successful career here to go back. So tell us about that experience and why you chose to go back to Trinidad.
So Raj, to answer that question, I have to inject a little something, if you don't mind. So I went to Penn, I studied engineering, and I graduated in 1988. Back then, it was tough. The economy was in a recession. All of my friends who went back to Trinidad were struggling to find jobs. But I had this girlfriend that I really liked. We'd been dating for like a year and a half, and she went back to Trinidad, and I, said, well, I'm going to stay and work. I remember, I'm from Trinidad. It's 1988. I don't have a green card. It's hard to find a job. I found one job. I took it. And I did this long-distance relationship with my wife, with my now wife. And at the tender age of 23, I suggested, because it wasn't even like a proposal, it was like, I think this kind of makes sense, right? Because, this is real. But so maybe what we should do is we should get married, and then you could come and be with me, and we could, what do you think of that? So, really not romantic. I do not recommend this. This is not a good marriage proposal by any stretch of the imagination. People these days do it much better, and they create, big Photoshops, big photo sessions around it. Anyway, sorry, I'm answering your question. But part of that was always a 5-year plan to go back to Trinidad, the Caribbean. And Raj, I would say that I think my father's kind of, my mom too, always sort of have an interest in our society and what's going on. And so I kind of had a gravitational pull to be part of doing something in that region that helped make a difference, whatever it looked like. And so we kept having this rolling 5-year plan. We were always in the question of when will we go back. So it wasn't a surprise that we eventually went back, but it was great to have returned.
And so you went back with McKinsey, right? You opened McKinsey's office.
I did. Yeah, so I opened an office of McKinsey in Puerto Rico, and that then became part of the Caracas office. My wife says she's not living in Caracas. There's just no way she. So if you're going there, me and the children will be in Trinidad. All right, you can come and see us when you want. So that's what we did. So I moved back with McKinsey as a partner, and I lived in Trinidad. And every week, I'd get off on a plane, wake up on a Monday morning, take American Eagle to San Juan, Puerto Rico, see a client, go to Santo Domingo in Dominican Republic, where I had another client, and either fly back to Trinidad or fly to Caracas or Bogota, depending upon the office activities that we had. And I was doing that for 2 years. And that's when I decided that this wasn't good for my relationship with it was not that it was bad, it's just I was like an absent father. My daughter turned 10, and I was like, I got like 7 more good years to be able to go to events, to help her with homework, This ain't working, So I came back from Christmas break, and I told my partners that, guys, I'm going to be leaving the firm. And I was, what? Wait a minute, 2 weeks ago, you were good. Everything was fine. You come back from Christmas and take some time. Clearly, you've bonked your head or something, and And when I explained the reason, everybody could appreciate and understand. And I said, okay, I'll leave in 6 months. And in 6 months, I helped transition clients and arrangements with people I was mentoring. And that's how I made the leap to come to what was called Neil and Massie at the time, which is the company I'm now the CEO of.
Yeah, and as a consultant, I think you came to that point, which many do, which is the sacrifice of being away Monday to Friday every single week when you have children is just enormous. We have Nigel here from JBN Consulting. Where's Nigel?
Yeah.
You see him?
Yeah, he's there.
There he is. Yeah, we wrote about him in the Healing Organization.
Yeah. Love that model. Where were you, man? Where were you?
So when he and his partners at Accenture realized, oh my God, my kids are going to grow up and not know me, they made the courageous decision to leave Accenture and then set up a consulting firm, JBN, where the number one rule is you don't have to travel for work and you get to be with your kids. right? And if you have more business in other places, we'll open local offices. All clients will be local. So I think that was a good, but you didn't have that option. So you made the courageous
Port of Spain
choice.
is a pretty small market.
And so then you joined this iconic company. It was iconic, right? This dates back to the British, colonial days, almost now a 100-year-old company. And you decided to join them, and then you very quickly, I think, rose up those ranks. And what led you to becoming the CEO there?
So, I joined Neil and Massie at the time, that's what it was called, because you look around for where the companies you can work. It's a small country, small economy, a limited number of opportunities. I really loved the CEO. He was a person that I thought was very inspirational, a caring person, a caring man, someone who everyone respected, well-loved, but good business person, smart mind, funny. I loved his team. They were entertaining. The organization seemed to be values-based. Didn't talk much about their values, but they seemed to be values-based. It was like, of all the options, I think I could go there, right? And it kind of like had, the framework, the foundation of what could be, and they were huge. At the time, maybe had 8,000 employees, and it was the largest company in the Caribbean Basin. I said, well, you could do something with this. This is a good platform for doing something that would be good in the world. And so that's how I came to join. And he knew that he was coming up to retirement, and he was actually looking for a successor, and I was a potential successor. And that was a joke in of itself because we never talked about it. Unfortunately, he actually got prostate cancer and passed away in office. And that's how I came to be the CEO. Again, I don't recommend that as a succession plan. waiting for your boss to die is not a good way. Particularly if you call that a plan, it can land you in a lot of trouble. But no, and he was just a wonderful person, but didn't go into much discussion about what his plan was and what I needed to do to succeed him. So when he passed away, I kind of assumed office at a very difficult time in the group. We had just done this major acquisition in Barbados. There were a lot of companies that were really, really, really not performing well, and we had to do major surgery with them, and it was worse than a baptism by fire, and actually delayed my ability to bring forth the kind of leadership that I really wanted to in terms of moving in this conscious direction.
And this was around 2009 after the financial crisis?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And the financial crisis led to global economic crisis. We had supermarkets, we had car companies that weren't doing well. We had a set of hotels in the Caribbean that, they'd not invested in, and nobody was traveling, and it was messy.
And so then what led you to Conscious Capitalism? What was the initial introduction to those ideas?
Your book.
My book. Somebody gave you the book, or you just found it at an airport? Or? I don't think we ever got into airports. So.
Yeah, I've been trying to remember. So first of all, I've had this kind of purpose thing, and even before, I happened on Conscious Capitalism, I had done work with the teams and had come up with a purpose for one part of the group. And then around 2011, when things cooled down a little bit, we developed this purpose to be a force for good, creating value, transforming life. So we went into Conscious Capitalism, yet didn't know anything about it. And on a vacation in 2013, I remember I was at an island home that the company has, not me, the company has. And I started reading the book, and I read it like in a day, taking vicious notes and creating. I called the office, said, "Please send me a flip chart." And I made flip charts with all the tenets of Conscious Capitalism. I didn't have the fancy slides, and brought my leadership team to this island house, and I say, "Okay, folks, we're going to talk this thing called Conscious Capitalism. And can you believe this? Can you believe this? Look," I actually kind of made some exhibits. The examples from firms of endearment, companies who have behaved like this, actually outperform financially other companies who don't. That is like QED, because always the struggle of this trade-off. I said, this is not a trade-off. This is actually a way to actually be more profitable. You can't go wrong with that. I mean, come on, don't you agree? Well, of course, all of us here in this room, but it was, I was a good salesman to the team, and everybody agreed this was something we should try to pursue. But Raj is hard.
So then you did it, and you lived happily ever after, right?
Yeah.
Smooth sailing from that point on?
Yeah.
No?
No, it's been a really worthwhile journey, because sort of making that decision and then confronting, because this organization's 100 years this year, so we started this journey, it was 90 years old. It was started by two white men, and they were white. I mean, it's just factual. But back in 1923, people of my skin color could not work in a company like this. In fact, my father couldn't work at a company like this because they didn't employ any diversity at all. And it came through a period of, if you think, the Great Depression, the Second World War, all sorts of different crises that you think they affect us in Trinidad, big oil crisis, whatever. And so it's a very resilient company, but it's a company created in a colonial model of management and leadership. And I grew up in that, so 90 years old, and we're accustomed to top-down command and control leadership. And along comes this strange fellow who says, yeah, let's do conscious capitalism, conscious leadership. Come on, we can do this, people. We can do this, right? And people are sure I've gone mad because I start to do things like tear down walls and collapse the lunchroom that was the executive dining room to make it a common lunchroom so everybody could eat lunch together. And like, what are you doing? Because they're privileges in the colonial system. When I got there, we still had tea ladies who would serve in white gloves and silverware and dedicated parking spots. And, there are certain, trappings of office that came with being a leader that, you got to enjoy and others didn't. And that just was not going to work with what we were trying. So that was not popular with some people on the team. And so we had to do that type of work. Then, of course, work on ourselves. I thought I was a cool guy. I thought I was a nice guy. I mean, I thought, I like people. I'm a friendly kind of fella. But it turns out, Tulane, that, you do have to listen to people. And sometimes they have some things to say about you and your leadership style that they're a little difficult to hear, want more often than you would prefer. And so, I went through that for myself. I want us to be open and everybody have ideas, but could you just please adopt what I said? Just go along with me, man. Let's. And so we went through that type of work, and to be honest, Raj, I would say most of my work was with me, and and I had the blessing of having people around me who had the courage and generosity to be honest and straight with me. And that then led to us being able to do the kind of work on ourselves as leaders that it really takes to transform a 90-year-old, now 100-year organization with 12,000, 13,000 people in it. We're not starting from fresh. We were starting from a company that had its own culture, and this is not what it was. So, it wasn't all a bed of roses.
Yeah, but as I recall, was it Mary that said something to you at one point?
Woke
you up?
Yeah, Raj. You see, the problem is Raj knows me and the story too well, so he draws these things out. Okay, so 2013, we embark upon this thing. We do some strategy work. We eventually say, Neil and Massie, it just is too long. We have too many different companies. Let's rebrand ourselves. We rebrand the group with 2015 is a great year. And then 2016 and 2017, we hit some speed bumps. We have some hurricanes that set us back in the insurance company. I suggest that we go into a cable and internet business that doesn't do very well, and we have to sell it off and take a big loss. And there were a number of such stories that led to a real, drop in our profit. I mean, like significant, right? And then the board starts to treat you like they don't trust you. And those meetings get to be a little difficult for the executives to take. And and you start to lose your mojo. You start to doubt whether this thing that you're trying to do here, you really should be pursuing that. Then, I was at McKinsey. I know how to make money. Let's focus on profit, man. Let's do it. Don't you agree? Well, if you're not agreeing, you still have to do it anyway. Boom, let's go. So I regressed to behaviors that I look back on and say, wow, but these things happen for a reason, not proudest moments. And then one of my ladies who leads people and culture at the organization came to me, Julie A.V. is her name.
Julie, yeah.
And she said, Gervase, listen, she's early in 2018, listen, if we're not gonna go back to what we said we were doing, following a conscious path, I'm leaving. Because who you are now, what we're doing now, this is not it. That was like a wake-up call. And so that led to a retreat in which I had to admit that I'll tell you the funny version of the story. Okay, so one of these retreats, there's somebody gonna facilitate. At the end of the day, he says, okay, tomorrow we're gonna do this exercise on fear where you're gonna confront your biggest fears, So we go for a beach walk in the morning, we come back. When I'm on the beach walk now, I'm with a good friend, one of my close buddies at the company, and I say to him, Dave, I really believe that I've lost the team. I don't think that, I don't think that people respect me, and I don't think I have the team. And he said, you have to start with that today. I said, no, you misunderstand. I am sharing with you. This is one of those moments of me, you my good partner, I'm sharing. He said, no, you have to start with that. So sure enough, the facilitator calls on me to share at some point in time. I think it was closer to lunch. And so it says, it opens up. And they said, yeah, Gervase will go first. So I had to admit this in a team of 13 or so people. And I said what I had felt. And I kind of really expected people to confirm that I was right. And fortunately, Wendy, who was a really nice lady, spoke first. And she was extremely moved by what I said. And she said, thank you, and just the opposite. And, love you, we support you. Thank you for sharing that. And that was a big moment. That was a big turning point for us. That whole retreat, had another conversation with the chairman of the board. And got back on track. And you've had an opportunity to visit with us. We've taken on being a healing organization. We've had record profits since then. When we got back on track with not focusing on profit. So I coach CEOs in the group to stop trying to focus on profit, because you're chasing something that is the grade that you get afterwards. And what you need to spend time on is on the inputs. Profit is the score at the end of the month. You'll get a score sheet, but it'll be measuring what you put in. How were employees working? How creative were you? Were we listening to one another? Were we bringing the best ideas? Were we finding ways to do things more efficiently, more effectively? Were we seeing what competitors were doing early because we were listening to people who were closer to it than we were? And when you do that, when you check at the end of the month, it's like, oh, but that's better.
That worked, yeah.
But that's better. Look at that. And we've recorded record performance by really pushing more autonomy to people and decision making. And what Tulane was saying about listening is so important. I mean, it is the magic. It is and we're not perfect at it yet, but at least we're interested in getting better, interested in being able to be an organization where, people have an expectation that you'll be listened to. And that creates enormous experience and feeling of belonging, power, respect, gives people more sense of purpose and being part of the enterprise and being able to shape it. And it's phenomenal. And when it's not working, or when there's something that's like a pollutant in the water, it's so evident, Raj. It shifts the whole energy of the enterprise.
And so now you're moving on to the next level of this, which we call the healing organization. And in our workshops in March, we did one in Barbados, one in Trinidad, one in Guyana. And the teams of leaders from each of those geographies came up. I think there were about 40 ways in which we could reduce suffering and bring more joy and promote healthy growth for people and so forth. So how do you feel that's going, this idea of becoming a healing organization?
Yeah, it's still new, Raj, to be honest. I think that it was great because now people are aware of it. It's now in everyone's language. I would say that the place that we have the biggest impact is taking a look at stress and the impact that we're all feeling burnt out in our organizations. And they did this burnout seminar for us. And so we have a lot of initiatives around eliminating that type of suffering. And we're now doing these listening sessions. I remember a lady shared with me, and shared in one of these fora that, she in September, her family knows not to speak to her because she's under such stress for these things that she's working on. And what I realized is she was talking about me, because I was the one creating the stressor, right? And so being able to identify those types of things that you don't even realize are creating stress in the organization is part of this journey to being a healing organization. And there are lots of other places.
So then, staying with that theme of healing, so then you had an experience when you traveled to Africa. You went to Nigeria, and then you also went to Ghana. And so please share what some of the awakenings that you felt you had there. Very recently, right? Like literally in the last few months.
Yeah, it's in June. So I probably will not be able to do this in 2.5 minutes, Raj.
No, don't worry about that. We can go over.
Okay.
I know the organizers.
Okay. And that's why I wanted to be with you, Raj. Always, go with the insider.
Time is a construct. Okay, go ahead.
So I went to Nigeria and then Ghana, part business development, part to speak at an Afro-Exim Bank conference. And I ended up, booking an extra day. When I tried to change the flight, it was just too expensive to change the flight. It's kind of, the world is telling you something. Okay, so I said, all right, you know what? I'm gonna use the extra day and I'm gonna go out to see the slave castles in Ghana. So I book a driver and we go off. It's a rainy day. It's like a piss nasty day to go do this. But I'm here. I'm going to go ahead and do this. So Raj, I am part of the Middle Passage. We got brought up. My family ancestors got brought over as slaves, and that's how I come to be in Trinidad, right? And yeah, we know a little bit of the history, but when you go to those castles, you have the opportunity to relive an experience that's just horrific and transforms your relationship to, this past and this history. So you go into these cells that still have a smell. I mean, it's over 200 years later. They just have like a dark kind of feeling to it. And they do some drama, they put you in a cell and they slam the door, boom, and it's pitch black. Right? And then they describe that there were 200 people in this room and they were held in that room, beaten, bled, ate, defecated, urinated, vomited, everything in the same place. And there's a film on the floor that is like 2 inches or more of just layers of flesh, remnants of this experience. It's over 200. They've excavated it, and you can see the brick that's down below it. And then you hear of the atrocities of children, women raped, governors, any form of rebellion beaten down. And I was like, well, why did they do this? This doesn't make sense because, think of inventory, right? If this is a business and, your slaves are your inventory. Why you destroy your inventory? Why you don't, take care of your inventory so they'll be stronger and, you have more of them to ship off? I mean, that would be more lucrative, right? And so, well, I was informed that, well, no, but for them to be effective, they had to be treated this way, to be domesticated, to be made to be servile, so that they would be able to be controlled. So it was part of a brainwashing exercise as well. The other thing that really got me was at every one of these slave castles, above the same dungeons or cells where people were being held, there were churches. Dutch had churches, Spanish, English had churches. Churches, I mean like places of worship. And you think about it, it's church-going people praying to God, et cetera, over 200 years. They'd come to this place of worship, and right below, there's a stank smell. I mean, it's got to be smelling nasty. People are whining in agony. And you come to worship, and it's like, cool. It's like, how does that, like, be okay? How do people accept that? Well, see now, this is where you have religious orders who are working in cahoots. Cahoots is not a good word, but working together to help people accept by having, theories, beliefs that, well, these people are not really humans. Take 4 of them to really make a human. They don't really have souls. I mean, a lot of different things that were said to make, pardon my French, this shit okay. And, well, Raj, I never experienced this up close like this. And I was reading your new book, Awakening to a Life of Purpose. What's the last part?
The paths to purpose, inner peace, and healing.
Inner peace and healing. And I was actually on the last chapter where you talk about going back to your village to create healing. So I've gone to 2 of these slave castles, and I'm coming back, and I'm like, Jesus, what was this, right? So I'm like in this processing. And my driver, he's not saying anything. He's like, cool. He's like, I think he's taken people before, and this is not an unusual reaction. So I start, because I have your book on the Kindle, and I start reading the last chapter. And it really occurs to me that this is one of the most deep collective traumas that have been perpetrated on a group of human beings. And it's not the only one. There's several. And there's some that are being committed right now, today, right? And we all know the effect of trauma, right? We all know post-traumatic stress disorder, and we all know trauma isn't good, and we go and we get work done on traumas. But this is intergenerational. This is over a series of years, hundreds of years. And there's no conversation for healing. None. Au contraire. There's more of a conversation to let's pretend it didn't happen. And I was getting this experience of, oh my God, wow, I have this. So Timothy read, where I've been educated, what I've done, and I can see that part of what I have is, an expectation, a feeling that, well, not even not good enough. I expect to be treated less than. I grew up in Trinidad. 40% of the population is African descent. where did I get this from? But I like, on reflection, I have it. I mean, even this morning, I'm like, why are they putting me to sit here? This is like confession, folks. This is true, right? It still happens, like an expectation that I'm going to be treated less than. And part of why I had the motivation to study and go to these universities and go to these institutions was, listen, I am someone to be respected. I am not less than. And that's just mine. And I probably have lived, quite frankly, a charmed and privileged life compared to many. And what it gave me an appreciation for is this deep scar that African-American people of African descent have. But there's a flip side to it. It's a nasty flip side, which is there's also an undiscussed guilt that if you're descendants of those who perpetrated such atrocities, you can't be with that. It wasn't me. I wasn't there. Why should I pay? I didn't want to talk about it. In fact, let's rewrite the whole goddamn story. And there can never be, in any of these situations of trauma, a real true opportunity for healing, unless you can bring truth to the discussion, which is what you were able to do in your village. And, that was mine, right? That was my experience, but I think it applies to so many other situations. And, I think Tim asked, what would you do? How could this be applied in business? And if we could recognize that those of us who are in organizations have things going on that others could empathize with, and you could create spaces to have those types of conversations. I think companies do it around gender a little bit. I think around race, not so good at all. And part of it is we don't want to share. And another part of it is people really don't want to hear. And yeah, Raj, that was a tremendous experience, and I don't know what to do with it. This is the second time.
It's kind of the beginning, yeah. This is kind of an awakening moment. I think you were kind of, to some degree, in denial of this history.
Yes.
Right, until it was confronted to you. I was listening to a podcast a few months ago, and there's an African-American actor named Mehcad Brooks. And the host of the podcast is white.
Yes.
And Mehcad said, I will never understand the ancestral guilt that you have. You will never understand the ancestral trauma that I have. But your ancestors and my ancestors would love it if we could heal together. And I think that is the opening that this provides, right? There's need for healing. In my case, I had trauma in my family, but I also was the beneficiary. I came from a warrior class to feudal culture. We had people who were essentially slaves working for us. And I was the beneficiary of all of that sacrifice and hard work, right? Now, I never tormented anybody, but I do recognize that, yes, I benefited from that. So I carry some of that from the other side as well. Yeah. And so what is your call for this audience here? I mean, is there a pathway, what is our call to healing here? What would you like people to think about?
As I said, this experience of being able to be in this room and share this in this way and without fear of being judged or treated a little differently afterwards is tremendous. And I think that, in just sharing this is like an awareness, like having the courage to have these kinds of conversations, because they're not easy. They're not comfortable. As I said, there are lots of reasons why most people just really don't want to have them. But if you can create the safe spaces, if you can go there, if you can rumble with the discomfort, I think you create enormous opportunity for trust. And I think this is just another dimension of the work we do as conscious leaders that we could embrace. Going there because it exists. It exists across tons of different races, creeds, religions, even political ideals. if we could find constructive ways to begin to repair that hurt, that damage, that trauma, and have such conversations as conscious leaders, I think it's a space where we could make a huge difference and shift the energy on conversations that are happening in the planet.
Thank you. Well, I want to applaud your courage. And